Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of Legends of LOR. I am joined once again by my good friend Frenchie.
Hi, it's me, Frenchie. I'm back again for the first time.
Exactly. And this week, as the big thing to talk about today is patch 4.7 just came out. We also had the Runeterra open, but neither of us won it, so I don't care.
I don't. Neither of us top cut either, so it doesn't even matter.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll get them next time. But
Surely,
yeah,
right.
that happened. There's some stuff with Aegis. My team is like 3-3 with a pretty good chance to get out. Frenchie's team is in purgatory at 2-4. So
Yeah, we're kind of stuck being tied with ABG, Piltover, and Zahn
yeah,
for
and being
third.
tied, yeah, and being tied with an ABG team is never what you want. So we'll see how that goes for him. But besides that, we also got the brand new patch 4.7 dropped today, and it has quite a few impactful nerfs and then also some buffs apparently. But so why don't we talk about that, Frenchie? We're just gonna go in order from how they appear on the thing. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, so let's start ourselves off with a Crimson Pigeon, which goes from granting +1/+1 to giving. I think
It,
it's a huge nerf for the card, and it will likely not see much play in any aggro deck for now.
yeah, this feels like the versatility you used to have is gone. If Vladimir ever gets reworked or rotated back into standard, it probably just goes into that. But honestly, now as an aggro card, it just isn't efficient enough.
Yeah, it's like like turn one pigeon can't just run away with the game. Like go pigeon on one and you go like a 2 drop on two. It comes a 3/3 and just like starts snowballing because now it'll always be a 2/2 on defensive turns, so it can't even trade that effectively. So I think this card is probably going to stop seeing play in Nox's aggression decks, and like you're no longer like this is no longer the card you want when you're going for Nox's aggro. I think.
Yeah, there are honestly older, uh, still slightly strong one drops in Noxus that are remaining, like the Precious Pet that is a 1 mana 2/1 fearsome that
Yeah.
probably at this point gets played over Crimson Pigeon, since it's just basically a 2/2 at this point.
Yeah, I agree. Next up, we have Coin going from Burst to Focus, which is a huge change for the deck, specifically for Karma's set. Now it really changes a lot about how they can use their mana, because they can no longer like play their champion and then use the coins immediately. They have to pass priority. They have to get priority back before they can use their coins, so they can't just like play a Karma and then you like go to killer, and then they're like, okay, I'm just gonna place your bets, coin, get all my mana back, and then hit okay, or like then deny. Now you
Yeah,
like have to make a choice first.
there are like three major like interactions that I think come out of this. Is the fact that now you can actually open attack on turn 10, even if Karma is flipped, and they can't use coins to refill their mana. They can still draw, but they can't use the coins anymore. So
Mhm.
that's a bit more interactable. Uh, that's a bit more easier for people to like pull out wins. You can't use coins defensively anymore. So
Yep.
like, if you drop a set and you only have one spell mana banked, you can't coin into tag out anymore. So it's easier
Mhm.
to kill champions. And also, it's just you can't do it mid combat either.
Yeah,
So
for sure. Yeah, like I think that defensive one is definitely very big. Like for example, you can't just like have a 4 stack coin in 1 mana and say I'm threatening deny. Now you have to use the coins if you want to be able to have deny. You can't just like hold it up. So I think that's a pretty big change. I think that'll definitely tag a karma set a little bit. I don't think the deck will completely die, but I definitely think it is a lot more interactable
I
now.
think honestly, I think it's going to be a lot weaker than what it currently is. I don't know where exactly it'll land in like the tier list of decks, but I don't think it's going to remain a tier 1 deck or
Yeah.
like
Oh,
just have a have a sort of death grip on control in standard.
yeah, I think it'll definitely tone the deck down a bit. We'll have to see if it actually does die out because a lot of decks that was struck, a few of the decks the other tier one decks are getting hit. Although I will say, spoiler alert, the two of the decks that really do well in the Karma set, which are like Jin Nar and Teemo Condensed Karina, didn't get touched at all. So those decks can definitely keep it in check if that becomes a problem.
Yeah, those the condensed decks haven't been hit at all this patch,
Yeah.
so we
Mhm.
will see probably some condensed shenanigans in standard.
Yeah, but you were talking about how the Karma set archetype might like go down a tier and not be tier one. What about an archetype that might just disappear entirely, which is the Kaisa one? Because Kaisa is going from being a 5 mana 4/4 with quick attack to just a 5 mana 4/4. So she no longer has base quick attack, which is a massive change for her. And honestly, I think it might just take her out of most of her archetypes. It definitely powers down her archetypes to the point that I don't know how competitive they're actually going to end up being. Because like quick attack on Kai'Sa was very important because it let her basically attack and always be able to trade up. Whereas now you don't really get to attack with Kai'Sa for free. Like if your opponent has a unit that can block her, they can kill her. You can't just like give her Scout Challenger and just instantly win the game because now she's taking damage back, so she can be answered a little bit better.
Yeah, the three main factors that came to my mind was just the fact that one, Kaisa probably levels up one turn later now because she needs an extra unit with that keyword, and that is kind of significant
Yeah.
because this coincides with two factors. One, like it's turn 6. It's either your turn where you want to be like you banked mana in the past and maybe you want to slam CS on 6. Usually not in the Kaisa deck, but maybe. It's also the turn where you want to be like attacking and maybe using your J4 if you're running Kaisa J4 instead of Kaisa Garen.
Yep.
And you also don't get to have that efficient removal that was Kaisa with, as Dragon said, the Valor into Kaisa combo, which gave her Scout and Challenger. In the past, she could trade into units. She could trade up, basically, because she had Quick Attack, she had Challenger, she could kill units that were like maybe 8 health with no tough because of her skill, but now she just can't do that. Like the trading that she
Yeah, but like even if she doesn't get Challenger because like you don't have a Challenger unit in play, you can still just attack with Kaisa, and there's likely not any units that are going to be in play that can actually affect her. Also,
that is
like you said, slowing her down a turn, making her come down on turn 6 instead of like turn 5 is huge for the deck because one of the big selling points for the deck is that you just like play units on curve, and then on turn 5 you slam a Kaisa, and then you have a lot of big threats that our opponent has to deal with that they can't answer all of them. But because Kaisa doesn't have quick attack, oftentimes she is usually the 6th keyword you have for flipping evolve. And now that she doesn't have that keyword at all, it's a lot more difficult to actually get her to evolve on curve.
Yeah. I think a 5 mana 4/4 on curve is not great.
No, it is like sure, like she still scales very well, and I think that she can still work, but I think it's going to be weaker than it was in the past, and she is definitely not going to be the top of the meta coming up. I think she'll definitely be hurt a lot more by this changes.
I would
And
agree.
yeah, and also like final point is that like Shurima doesn't have a lot of quick attack units to give this to her. It's like Akshan and Nidalee, and that's it. And that's your other champion slot. I think there's no non-champions in Shurima that have quick attack.
I mean,
So
this also sparks a bit of a difficulty for Kaisa decks in standard,
mm,
where they often are starved for champion slots, right?
yes,
Like when we look at like old Kaisa and Eternal or like pre-rotation Kaisa was fine with running just Kaisa because
mm,
you had stuff like Rite of Calling to just get more Kaisas and just tutor out more Kaisas. But in standard you don't have that, so you're just playing with like other efficient champions in Demacia because it was just like Garen and J4 who could make up for not having
mm,
Kaisa in hand by just being good stats for their cost and just being able to also like provide a keyword to Kaisa if they came down with regen and barrier. But like now you have to splash an Akshan, so you have to take into consideration like a new champion ratio to get that sort of like, and the curve also like messes up
mm.
again as you mentioned. Like
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean you can play Nidalee as well, but that like it's 4 mana, so it's like sure you can like play 2 mana and then 2 spell mana, but can still mess with the curve of actually getting things out on time. So I think this will definitely hurt the Kai'Sa deck quite a bit, and I wouldn't be surprised if it like is only goes with being like on the fringes instead of being like it's like right now it's kind of like tier 2. I'd be surprised if it just goes to being like tier 3 or not even showing up anymore.
speaking of cards being nerfed, Dragon, let's talk about the card that has potentially been nerfed a lot, like the most these past few patches. Pounder Pandemonium, nerfed once
Yes.
again.
Powder Pandemonium is going from 5 mana to 7 mana, and this is a very massive change for a few things. So, one, you can't even double monkey anymore. Like before, on turn 7, you could Powder Pandemonium and then Powder Pandemonium again. Now you can't even play two on the same turn at any point in the game.
This
So
card is unplayable. Even if you
I wouldn't
could,
go that
like,
far.
I mean, I would say it is unplayable because, like, what in standard at least,
Mhm.
like, is Samira Fizz ever going to run a 7 cost pound ammonium? That is
That's, I mean, Powder Pandemonium is still a strong card. If you can, like, you can get all the procs from it and like summon a full board of monkeys. It is still a very strong card. It's just at 7 mana, it's just so slow. I don't know if you can ever justify running 3 of it now anymore. Like maybe you could say I'm playing like 1 or 2 of them as like my top end finisher. Well, it's very difficult to justify this card, and I think Samira Fizz might have had a chance to resurge this patch with some of the other changes, but because of it going to 7 mana, I doubt Samira Fizz is going to make a comeback this patch because their main win condition is gone, and then their other win conditions that they were playing through before, like Inferna, are like just also still nerfed from before, making them a lot worse. So I think the Pattern Pandemonium going to 7 mana is probably enough to just make sure this card doesn't come back and probably won't see play coming forward. Sound about right?
sounds about right.
Okay.
Moving forward, we are getting an internal nerf.
Yep. Yes, this is for Legionary Charge. Is going from 2 mana to 3 mana. I mean, I was watching the dev stream for it, and I like the reasoning for it. It's like, yeah, this card is a tutor, and it's drawing a lot of the power budget we have for a lot of the new cards we're making. So we wanted to just nerf it now rather than wait, because like they were going to nerf this in the next Eternal Balance patch coming up next month, but they figured they might as well do it now because they already knew they were going to do this, and like it is affecting the power budget quite a bit. Because
Uh,
like tutors are very, very powerful. It's like when we say tutors, I mean like you're able to search for a specific card from your deck. So like being able to just tutor up Plaza Guardians was very good, and like tutoring up Rumbles, tutoring up Doctor, and stuff like that. So yeah, this card was definitely really good. Also, the fact that it no longer is 2 mana means it's a lot harder to double it with Seraphine, making it that weakening that deck even more. So I like this change, and I'm glad that they're putting it in now for the people playing Eternal can rest a little bit easier knowing Plaza Guardian Seraphine is slightly weaker.
yep.
Yeah,
And
especially since the Plaza Guardian card also got hit, going from a 6/6 to a 5/5.
yeah, this change, I actually don't know how significant this change is going to be. I mean, I would argue that the Legionary Charge is more significant than the Plaza Guardian change.
Mhm.
Losing that 1/1 stats is still a nice addition, but I think it's is like if this was by itself, I don't think this nerf would be significant. But in addition to the Legionary Charge, I think this pushes down Samira Seraphine a bit, and at least makes the breakpoints for when they can kill you on just open attacks slightly different.
Yeah, it's like unless you like line up a 3 damage, 2 damage removal spell, so that can clean it up, or like the 5 damage ones that exist. And if someone gets like 3 of these in a Samira, they can't. They don't just immediately kill you. They have to have something else. It's like
Exactly.
they need they like are pushing a little bit less damage, which gives you a little bit more chance to wiggle out and find a way to survive. So I like these changes. I think they're good. But the changes that I think was the best for this patch was probably Siren Song going from 4 mana to 6 mana. I was not expecting it to get plus 2 mana. I thought they would do something else rather than this. I
I
didn't
thought
think
it
they would
would
just go. I didn't think they just go for the throat and take this card out.
really. I thought it would just go up by 1 mana, go up to 5
Yeah,
cost, and then they would revisit it later on. But like going from 4 cost to 6 cost,
Mhm.
uh, this card isn't going to be as played as we see it right now in the meta. It's gonna
Uh,
have trouble against aggro now.
yeah, I think like aggro is now a very clear counter to the Siren Song deck because like losing on that 2 mana just limits your plays so much more. If you and like you can't like play a unit before this and play this on curve unless you're playing like specifically Shell Stalker, which definitely hurts how aggressive these decks can get to start off the game. 6 mana, something Jace synergies, but I think that's kind of troll to even try that. Um,
Do not play Jace Siren Song or Jace Eve. That is that is not a real deck.
no, how this? Don't play it unless you're playing it day one against me. Then please do. Because I will donate you the win because I will definitely lose to that deck still. But yeah, I mean, I think this is gonna completely shift the meta with Siren Song +2 cost, so that's probably basically dead. I think for all the archetypes that were playing it.
More or less.
I think at the very least, it's no longer to be a game of did they draw Siren Song on 3? Oh, they did. I'm dead. And also, it's no longer be a game of I need to be playing deny on. I need to put 3 deny in my deck because if I can't deny this on turn 3, I lose the game. Stuff like that.
I think the only deck that might still run Siren Song would be Evelyn Viego, and it wouldn't be running it as a build round. It would just be running it as like this is a card that is in Evelyn's package, and it just generates a Husky and gives +1/+1.
Yeah, like
to-
I think building around this would be a lot weaker. But if you're like playing this for the value it can bring, maybe it could see play. Like Eve is kind of at the pace. Some Eve decks can be at the pace that likes this, but overall, I think this card's probably gonna start disappearing, and I think
Yeah.
it's gonna open up a lot of new things for the meta, such as some of these cards that got buffed. Do you want to start talking about these?
Sure, Risky Venture, going from a 3-cost deal 2 to a 4-cost deal 2, and still creating 2 coins if it kills it. I
Yeah.
think this is a good buff. It makes it so that you're like the breakpoint from 2 health to 3 health is very significant.
Mhm.
It's able to target a wider range of cards. I do think rather than actually being a full up like buff though, I think this is more of a side adjustment rather than an actual buff.
Yeah,
Because
I think this is more of a side grade. I'd agree because like one more mana does matter because you can't just like bank full spell mana and play this.
yeah.
But dealing 3 damage means it's able to answer a lot more threats in the game, and because it can give you 2 coins if it succeeds, it only does only technically cost 3. And if you're like building around the coin package, this can be quite good. Hey,
So
I really like the flavor of this card. It's like risky venture. So I think this card probably doesn't hit many decks still. Although Bilgewater does have a hard time dealing 3 damage efficiently. It's like only Riptide Sermon that does 3 in one card. Otherwise, you need kegs, and there's not a lot of keg cards right now in standard that you want to be playing. Like BB exists, but this does not pair well with BB at all. And like,
So I was actually going to mention BB in the Jack Seraphine deck. I think this card is actually going to be taken out of that deck because in the past it may have seen play as a 1 of or a 2 of. Because if you were playing a bar version of Jack Seraphine, you would play down the bar, and then as a 3-mana card, it would become a 2-mana card, and there was some synergy with Seraphine. But like, this might now just be played as more of an honest just removal tool for 4 mana, just hitting a wider range of cards.
yeah, sounds about right. Well, let's move on to the next card, which I think is probably one of the biggest buffs this patch, maybe even the biggest, which is Hush going from 3 mana to 2 mana.
So yeah, this is massive. Like we're not seeing the return to the old Hush, but it is going back to being 2 mana.
Yeah,
And
I was around for 2 mana Hush, and let me tell you, that card was very strong in its day. And while I think, like Dev said, like with equipment coming out, that's taking quite a bit of power away from Hush because you can't like silence attachments, you can't silence the equipment stuff. So
yeah,
there's definitely not as good as it once was, but it is still 2 mana. It makes it a lot more powerful. It is now in the Seraphine and Song Spinner pool, so have fun playing against those decks now when they hit silence.
yeah, Song Spinner hitting silence is not gonna hitting Hush is not gonna be fun. But yeah, this is both a Telstone's Hush. This is just a generally it is a Telstone's buff, and it is generally a buff to target control. This will probably see both play in standard and eternal. It's just a good card now. It's just
Yeah.
good.
Also, Targon Telstones. It's crazy how much of a glow up that card got from being the worst Telstone in the game to arguably the best now. That like you have like 2 mana Hush. You have
It's competing for the top spot with, I would argue, with the SI Telstones and the Piltover Telstones, but I would say
I
it's a very strong
oh,
contestant
it's
for.
definitely better than I think it's definitely better than SI Telstones. And it's probably and like like PNC Telstones like Aftershock is quite good, but the other two options aren't nearly as good. Whereas this one is like all the options. I think all the options here combined are better than PNC. It's just Aftershock's such a good card right now.
I would say Pogger's Day is still pretty decent for draw.
Hogger's Day is okay when you don't have to main deck it, but it's still very expensive to do it. I mean, Three Sisters is the one we're actually talking about because that's probably the best Tellstone, but it's not technically a Tellstone, so who knows? But hey, speaking of Freljord's one though, we got some big buffs to Freljord Frostbite with a rework for the Rhyme Fang pack. Instead of being
Yeah.
a 1 mana 1/1 that gets that like has the cards give it +1/+1 for each Frostbite and whatever, it's now a 3 mana 0/4 that has +1/+0 for each time you Frostbite enemies this game. So essentially, the big thing here is that it used to be that it would remember how many frostbites you'd had when you played the card that summoned it for the first time, whereas now it'll remember it itself. So you frostbite after you've played that card, you can keep popping up its power, which I think makes it a lot more appealing. I would say, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I would completely agree with that, and I
Like
already see.
it doesn't feel as bad if you like play 4 mana, like if you pay like 4 mana Frozen in Fear on turn 3, and like then you summon like a 2/2. Now you're like summoning the 1/4, but then you can keep growing it as the game goes on, so it's a little bit
Yeah.
better, I think.
So it's transformed from just a regular unit that you might just play towards being a potential actual win con for a Frostbite deck, where it's not the best win condition,
Mhm.
but it has the potential to be one where it's like if you leave it alone, it could just get incredibly large and start dealing a lot of damage.
It's really nice that you can play this before you go for your before you go for like for example like a Winter's Breath. Like before, it was really difficult to like play Winter's Breath. Like you had to like play Winter's Breath first, then play this card. Whereas now you can do it the other way around, which is way better for your tempo and way better for actually like trying to set up for a win condition. Additionally, Rhyme Fang Den Mother got a cost reduction. It is now 5 mana 4/4 instead of a 6 mana 5/5, which I also think is a huge buff for that card. The 6 mana was pretty late into the game. It's a little bit hard to justify. It was like a 5 mana 4/4 that summons another unit that can be pretty big. Is I think might actually see some play.
Oh yeah, I could definitely see it being put into some mid-range Freljord archetypes that
Yeah,
make use of Frostbites.
yeah. I think Frostbite is be a little bit more easy to justify now. So maybe we'll start seeing that pop up. Hey, anything else you want to say about this?
I was just gonna say that I can already envision day one the Ash Senna builders coming out of the woodworks to
Yeah,
rebuild Ash Senna.
dude, fast speed Frostbite is messed up. Let me tell you.
It genuinely has the potential to be.
Like if you attack your opponent and they just play a fast speed Winter's Breath, you actually can't do anything about that
I
because
think
like
it's even more crazy if you think about it because they can block with a Rhinefang pack and then put Winter's Breath on the stack, and then it will grow while blocking, which is kind of funny.
yeah, and also you can't buff your way out of it because fast speed Frostbite, by the way.
Yep.
But anyways, let's move on to the other buffs for the Bilgewater coin package with the headliner himself, Jack, getting, I would say, essentially a rework. He had a lot more power added onto him. I think this is, I mean, this is in part because of the way the coin change, because now that coins are focus speed, that did take quite a bit of power out of Jack because he was also the main proponent for the coin package, and now that they're no longer really played at burst, a little bit weaker. And also means that he has a hard time refilling mana at burst speed, which will matter because of his new text he got, which is whenever you refill mana, heal me 1 for each mana refilled.
Yeah, and
Oh,
this is a very significant change for Jack because not only does this mean after you strike, you can heal him post combat by just playing the coins, and it's also like synergizes with his level up condition, but it also says that it's not just when you use coins, it's whenever you refill mana. So if you are in like TNZ, for example, and if you're playing Formula, you can heal 3 in combat because Formula is burst speed.
yep.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
like
a very cool change. It's a
yeah,
very
like
efficient change, yeah.
yeah, like it works with a tune. It works with like I said, formula. It works with anything else that can refill mana. So I think it's very cool. I think it might let him start seeing a little bit more play because now he's even more difficult to remove. Like a 4-mana 4/5 was already a pretty beefy body. Now he has a way to heal himself as well. So maybe like with the other things that got tagged and him getting this much extra power, maybe Jack starts making some sense and might start seeing play.
I would
At very least,
agree.
I think Jack Seraphine can be a deck for real.
Almost definitely. I think just having the efficient card, like the value champion of Jack and Seraphine, where he just acts as a 4-mana 4/5 that gets efficient trades. Now that
Uh,
he heals, it's going to be so much more difficult for
mm,
opponents to deal with him. Yeah, so I think this is both a Jack Seraphine buff and just generally a buff towards other Jack decks.
yeah, and those don't exist, so we take those.
We take those exactly.
Yeah. Well, another interesting change was to Angel. She was a 5-mana 6/5 with Brash, which was AKA the Bilgewater Trifarian Shield Breaker, because that was the 5-mana 6/5 Fearsome from Noxus. But now she has shifted her identity to not match him. And instead, she loses a point of power, but now has Plunder create 3 coins in hand, which seems like a very powerful Plunder payoff.
That is a lot of coins, and I think it's very interesting because it brings back well, it doesn't bring back, but we've taken away a Noxus Bilgewater archetype in the form of Samira Fizz by nerfing Powder Pandemonium. But I wonder if this opens up design space. Well, not design space, but deck building space for another uh, Noxus Bilgewater archetype,
Mm.
which sort of combines Plunder and the Brash archetype that Jack holds.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like creating 3 coins in hand is very strong because like you can get a lot of tempo plays with that. Like playing Angel, like you like warning shot, play Angel, play the coins, then like play another 3-drop. That's quite a lot of power you're putting into play in one action. And like there could be some interesting combos. Like Daring Demolisher can re-trigger plunder effects. And since you get make 3 coins, it would pay for itself because you're getting 3 coins with spending 2 mana to activate it again.
That's kind of wild, actually. I didn't think of that.
So like there could be some combos set up there. Now like at 5 mana it is a bit slow. Also another funny combo is condense because you can condense her, play her for 1 mana, and that's like 3 mana to play it and get 3 coins. It's probably not that great unless you're like trying to like level Jack in one action, but some cool things. I think this is a lot more interesting than just a textless 6/5 with Brash. With like the plunder effect, I think she's a lot more interesting and maybe even might all see some play.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. All right, we got
Speaking of
6 cards left. Makai Witherclaw, five
when,
mana, 5/4. He now is able to grant an enemy vulnerable on play, like Merciless Hunter, and his other text unchanged, which is when an enemy is challenged, give it -2/-0 this round.
I
So he
actually
can
really
now
like this change.
so he can now trigger his own condition, which is pretty cool.
He could trigger his own condition. Just having another card that grants an enemy vulnerable is really nice in Shurima. Like, this obviously helps out Renekton a lot, but just even outside of Renekton, like this could help in something like Nidalee maybe if you're running a Nidalee deck and you need to have efficient trades
Mhm.
and need a way to get vulnerable. Here's another card that has vulnerable.
Yeah, like
Generally,
honestly, even like Nasus Vaults, maybe this could see play because like the 5-drop slot in Nasus Vaults currently is the 5-mana 4/6, the Kai whatever that like strikes an enemy if you've gotten 4 slays. But that trigger is that's like never triggered on turn 5, so it's a really bad play on turn 5 most of the time. Whereas this, I think I wouldn't mind playing this on turn 5. He comes down and kills a unit most of the time. And like 5/4 is not that bad.
yeah, it's a decent stat line for 5 when you have 2 effects now. And yeah,
Mhm.
I would agree. I would like. I don't know if I would. I think it would depend on the type, the version
Mhm.
of Nasus Vaults that you're running. But yeah, I think this is now a strong contender to replace the other Bakai.
Yeah, but other than that, like maybe he's playing with the Nectin, etc., etc. But he's at very least like I don't. he doesn't feel like as bad of a card now. I think he has serious, some considerations like one or two of maybe. This is a pretty powerful effect. Like if you're able to like get more than just his vulnerable off, it's a very powerful effect. It's like makes trades a lot worse for your opponent and can let you take control of the board. But since it is 5 mana, it can come down a little bit late, which does matter. All right, 5 left. Faithful Watchdog. It's getting -1/-1 in stats, so it's now a 3 mana 1/2. Keeps the cost 2 less with an allied die this round, but now it gains play equip me with an equipment that costs 2 or less from hand and forge me. So essentially, he lost -1/-1, but he's getting that back because he's forging. So now he'll put that +1/+1 on the equipment that you would equip to him, which I think is probably better than the 1/1 worth of stats.
I think
Would you
this was
agree?
a very good change.
Mhm.
I think with like an older deck that people might remember, like Vayne J4 in Freljord, this would definitely see play in that if people are still running that in Eternal. I think in Standard, this might see play in Vayne Trox, I'm not sure. But I think having that Forge and an equipment is very significant and very nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
for
I like this
sure.
card. Yeah,
Yeah, okay, maybe Vayne Orange shows up. Who knows?
who
But
knows?
yeah, I think this effect is the forging is definitely better than I would. Yeah, like losing 1/1 in stats is definitely worth getting forged because you'd rather have that go on the equipment. So when this dies, the equipment stays buffed, which will buff up future units as well. It's just a matter of do the archetypes that play this card want this card in it, and I don't know if the answer is going to be yes. Still, I will say like being able to play this for 1 mana because of its first line of text is really good because you can get like a pretty decently sized unit for this, especially like if you get an equipment that's been forged a few times, it can get out of hand. But
Yeah,
I don't know if he's going to really end up seeing a lot of play in the end.
we will definitely see.
Yep.
And
All right.
speaking of buffs, where we don't know how much it'll affect gameplay, uh, Aurora Borealis goes from 6 cost to 5 cost. Is this a significant enough change, do you think, to make Pork King come out of his meme tier status?
Well, first off, something fan club president hit. Moving on from that
Oh,
though.
true, true.
Oh wait, actually no, he's also out of the it's also out of the Reggie pool. So big nerf there. Oh, we also forgot to
Matching up.
mention earlier that the Siren Song Hexic Anomaly shenanigans that'll occur, yada yada. And finally, Aurora Borealis, I think going to 5 mana is a good start for this card. Did you know that this card used to be 7 mana?
I actually did not.
Yeah, this
And
card used to be 7 mana, and when it first got buffed to 6 mana, it saw some play with Demacia and with Lux Poros, because you'd like play this and level Lux immediately. And then the other two cards would also level Lux, but that deck got outclassed a little bit, and it was also kind of carried by the fact that Radiant Guardian was a 5/5 with lifesteal still at the time, and that's definitely not the case anymore. And it's also definitely not the case. I think that this at 5 mana is going to be seeing play. I don't think. I think it's a very good value card. Like if the game is going late, 5 mana for 2 Poros and 2 ways to buff them is very strong. It's like good like setting up for later turns, but the problem is that a lot of decks are fast, and like this is kind of a 5 mana do nothing the turn you play it, and you're not always guaranteed to get a 1 cost Poro to play from it. While most of them are 1 cost, sometimes you can get like the 3/3 Mighty Poro, or worst of all, or the Heart of the Fluffed. Because the issue with
oh,
Heart of the Fluffed is it consolidates all of your stats into one threat that can be answered, which is almost always bad. It's like against specifically like Demacia Aatrox, it's good, but like if you're against like Ionia or Targon or stuff like that, it's very bad to have that happen to you.
having your Heart of the Fluff getting sunburst is not fun.
No. So I don't know this card's going to actually see play in the Portal King decks because like I think they have enough value from the Portal King. I don't know if they really need this card as well.
I think this does see play in the Power King decks, but I don't think it necessarily makes the Power King decks any like it will make it more consistent maybe, but I don't know if it makes it stronger. I don't think it's going to raise the win rate very much.
Me neither. But finally, we have our last three cards. So these are all cards aimed at buffing the Nico archetype, which are Warden of the Tribes going from a 9-mana card to an 8-mana card, Crested Lionhawk going from a 5/5 to a 6/6, and Glacial Saurian losing 1 point of toughness but gaining Overwhelm. So it's now a 5/4 Overwhelm instead of a 5/5 with no text or with no keywords. First off, I want to say War of the Tribes is big for two reasons. One, War of the Tribe Nico was already a deck that was beginning to see some fringe play. And now that you can play War of the Tribes an entire turn earlier, that's absolutely massive for that deck. It's like you can like Buried in Ice on 7, play War of the Tribes on 8, and you just run your opponent over. Or like just being able to play it for 8 mana is just huge. Also, I've seen some decks that are playing Condense. War of the Tribes getting Condense is also really strong because you just build up so many stats. Since he also affects himself with his summon effect, even though he's a 1/1 base, he can kind of become like a 5/5 or 6/6 overwhelm, which is really good still. So I think this card was like just starting to see some experimentation at 9 mana. I think this card might just be a meta contender at 8 mana, which is pretty crazy because this card has never seen any play in its history, except as like meme tier status, and now it might actually get to be competitive. But that was the first thing, Frenchie. You want to know what the second thing is?
What is the second thing, Dragon?
So, did you know that War of the Tribe was the only 9-cost card in Freljord?
Actually, yes, I knew that.
Yeah, so
because
well, the only 9-cost unit in Freljord.
yeah, and I do believe that it is no longer 9 cost. You can return to playing your favorite deck.
I want to say it's my favorite deck.
It is your favorite. It is a deck that you enjoy playing for me.
It is a deck I enjoy playing for memes. You are correct. So that deck is Karina Varaza Freljord, which so essentially for those who don't know what that combo is, essentially Karina Varaza, the way it works is that there's that card that got added a while ago that's 2 mana, discard a card, and create a follower in hand that costs 1 more. So the idea there is that you would discard an 8-cost spell and you'd get Karina Varaza always. But when War of the Tribes came out, you were no longer guaranteed to get Karina because there's another 9-cost in the pool. Now you're always guaranteed to get Karina if you discard an 8-cost spell. Which, yeah. So you're like playing Karina on 8, playing Karina on 9, you can like kind of wipe your opponent's board. You're playing a lot of things. It's a funny deck. I don't think it's very good. You lost all of your healing and you lost Ravine, so it's like a lot harder to survive now, but it'll be a funny deck to play.
It is a deck that you can play on patch. But speaking of Nico buffs as well, we can move on to the Crested Lionhawk, which has gone from being a 5/5, a 6-mana 5/5 tough to being a 6-mana 6/6 tough. Which I think is actually going to be a very significant change. I think this card is not actually playable.
Yeah, I mean, the Mosia spells are actually pretty good all around. You can get champion strength and make your opponent absolutely mauled. You can get like Form Up as a pop spell. You can get Relentless Pursuit as another way to rally. You can get Challenger or Strike spells. Like there's quite a few really good spells here. Like a 6/6 with Tough is a pretty solid stat line. So like 6/6 with Tough that draws you a strong spell that could even win you the game. And also it's Bird, which there's not a lot of in the Nico archetype right now that they play. I think this could be maybe a real consideration.
I think this is also going to be a very major consideration in Nico decks because it provides the potential for interaction, which Nico cannot main deck in her own region.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you are playing a secondary region that can't necessarily remove an opposing unit, for example, usually something like a capture card, a capture spell, you're not going to main deck that usually. It's not powerful enough to be main decked. But if you are to play a Crescent Lionhawk and you see like a capture card and you're like, oh, I need to capture, like I need to remove this unit on an opposing board, you might just pick it simply because you need interaction. And Crescent Lionhawk can't provide that. Or you just get single combat.
Yeah, and your opponent will probably not be expecting it because Nico probably not in Demacia. You never have interaction. Why would I play around single combat Smile?
Exactly.
And then you play this, and now it's like, oh, I played into single combat, and now they could have it. So yeah, Finally, the last card on this list, Glacial Saurian. I think this card was already good and was seeing play in Jack's Orn decks, and I think this card is going to see play in even more decks now that it has Overwhelm. Like, this card went from a good body with a good effect to a card you can actually play to win the game with, because this holds equipment very well now that has base Overwhelm, so you don't have to have like an Overwhelm equipment to actually push damage. So like if you get like a combat cook and it gets scout weapon and then it dies, then you just like play this and put scout equipment on it. It's like going to murder your opponent, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think Jackson is going to be a terrifying deck with this in standard. It was already.
Yeah, Jax Orn was already like probably one of the top 5 decks, maybe. It was just starting to come up, so it was like wasn't that prevalent last week, whereas like now it's like pretty prevalent and like a lot more people are playing it, and it only got buffed. It didn't get a single nerf.
It has
I
gaining Ingvar, gaining a buffed Glacial Saurian. I'm gonna imagine we're gonna be seeing a lot of Jacksorn starting tomorrow.
Yeah, like Jax Orn was like all Jax Orn was already really well positioned in the meta, and like with Siren Song stuff going down, some more Demacia decks might emerge, and Jax Orn is still good into Demacia decks because you can play Frostbite and very nice. I suspect Jax Orn is probably going to be one of the top 3 decks in the coming expansion, and get your Jax Orn stocks in now. But with that, we have gone through every single card in this patch.
Yes, and at this point it'll be very interesting tomorrow to see what people will be brewing and what they will be playing on ladder.
I agree. So I guess a few last things to talk about would be one, free build is back. I have been having fun. Yesterday I played Infinite Mill. I went 6-1. That was pretty fun. Today I'm playing. So there's been some people that are cooking up some really interesting decks to try and counter the meta, and one of them is a Teemo deck that goes that's playing the deep package. So you're playing Sea Scarab because it's a 2-mana 5/6, so you can just beat your opponents down. You're playing Mega Tusk because it like heals you 3 and it's a 6/7, which is really good. And then you're playing Abyssal Eye as a 6/6 that lets you draw through your deck. You're playing Go Hard, so you have a way to win condition and a way to not deck yourself out. And then we're playing Mage Seeker Jr. as a way to deal with all the spell-based decks that are running around, because you just play that. Your opponents have a really hard time playing spells and winning the game. And since your deck is so small, it's very consistently able to find its tech cards. It needs like Passage Unearned against Drop Border combo and stuff like that.
Yeah, very interesting free belt concepts. The innovation is going to be going strong. I haven't yet started my delve into the free build world, but I will probably be starting one run tonight. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening this week. We got through all the new cards, and I'll be excited to see all the new decks that are going to come out. See how things shape up now that Siren Song isn't the predominant force that's has its like gaze over the meta and it's kind of controlling things, and see what new archetypes are going to emerge.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting time tomorrow.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening. We're going to sign off. Have a great rest of your night, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.